Tanse niato temata kia tamaskatana ikakia miyagisi Mr. Hi. It's a cold day out there, but it's a good day for the grizzly bears. Conor Kerr, Otsini Nitsi Gasoon, Manitou Sagahigan. Yeah, that guy right there. If you told him he would be working at an Indigenous Student Services Center 12 years later, he would have been like, what? What, really? But I want to talk a little bit about that, but first I'm going to derail my entire presentation to talk about treaty acknowledgements. I think it's a thing that we've been doing a lot of lately, and we really need to start thinking about how that, that actually affects us as treaty people. So when we read these out loud, we need to start looking into that as a detail, and not just using it as an opening for things. I think I'm really proud of the fact that if you go to any school in Edmonton nowadays, you can ask any kid there and talk to them and ask them what treaty territory we're on, and they'll be able to tell you we're on Treaty 6 territory. That would not have happened 10 years ago. But nowadays you can do that. But now we need to take it to the next step and start really thinking about what that means to be treaty people. Anyway, so this is Treaty 10 territory in Saskatchewan that we're on here. And I want to just talk a little bit about where I got here as my family. I was raised by my grandmother and my parents who, in a traditional Métis household, we never talked about what it was to be Métis because we just lived it on a day-to-day basis. And it became this thing where later on, when I started going to university, people would be asking, like, so what's it like to be Métis? And I just look at them and be like, what's it like to be Ukrainian, man? What's it like to be German? I don't know. It's just who we are. Like, it's just something that we've grown up with, something that we identify with, something that's important to us. And when I went to the University of Alberta, I was lost, and I was trying to figure out what I could do to make those connections in the city. When you come into from a rural place to a big city, you don't know how to ride the bus, you don't know how to do any of those things. And so I'm hopping on the bus and I'm just riding around Edmonton aimlessly, and I didn't realize you had to pull the yellow to get off at a certain stop. So I was just going down 118th Ave, and all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, I better stop off here. And when I went to the University of Alberta, I tried to make connections with the Indigenous Student Center there, which was this is 12 years ago. But I couldn't. I walked in and they looked at me and they're like, oh, you? And I just thought to myself, I just turned around. I walked right outside. I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I connected. And I feel like at this point, the stereotyping characters of Indigenous people is outdated. And anyone knows that there are a lot of people who look exactly like me who exist in Indigenous communities now at this point. I mean, most of them do still have hair, but I am going to regrow mine over the course of the next few days. I'm going to show up at some point with this just flowing mane, and everyone's going to be like, dude, you've been shaving your head since you were 20. What are you doing? But I had this great series of, I had this weird career where I started off driving a hotshot truck, and then I randomly threw in an application for this internship with the provincial government. And that lady who was in that canoe picture afterwards, I got placed with her, thankfully, and we went and we immediately went on this great tour of Alberta where we started in Fort Chipewyan, and we ended up in Piikani Nation down in southern Alberta. And we talked to Blackfoot elders and Dene elders and Cree elders and Saulteaux elders and Nakota Sioux elders and Métis elders and knowledge keepers and educators. And we heard about their passion for their communities and their youth and how they wanted it to be a different future than the one that we had, and how we could do this together and how we could build this community and create this sense of education and a sense of belonging for everyone, Indigenous people and non-Indigenous. So that when you start talking about treaty and you start talking about these things and you come into and you start working together, you can build this mutual dialogue, and we don't have to be relying on these our out-of-date stereotypes and myths and different things that happen and come up. And so I ended up working for the public school board for a little bit, and then ended up at Norquest College. And at Norquest College, and I think I saw one of my fellow co-workers here, Andrea, somewhere. At Norquest College, we really strive to have this Indigenous Student Center where it's a space for everybody, a space for Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people, and not even just the students at the college, but community members to come in and learn from our elders, from I call our elder my boss there because she's really the one who runs the center. But and learn from our students and just to feel a beautiful spot. So when we go through these tragedies and we start and when you go through these tragedies and you go in these places, you can start hearing the sense of belonging, and you can start listening to the words and the wisdom of the ancestors. And I know even as I stand right here, I feel so proud that my family, for generations and generations and generations, right back to when my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, John Quinn Gladue, signed Treaty 6 for the Papachase Nation, right on this land right here, that I'm honoring them by being up here and telling these stories. And that we can bring these youth out here. And with these youth, we can teach them a little bit more about what it means to be an Indigenous person. So when they exist in this area, they can be proud of who they are. They can be proud to share their culture with everyone. And so when they walk into Indigenous student centers later on, they can get a good sense of belonging and they don't feel lost, that they can feel immediately that pride and that they belong in a school. Especially a school like Norquest. We are a Western school, but we want to make sure that we have that Indigenous education and culturally appropriate services in all of our materials across the board. And so when this guy thinks later on in life what he can actually do, he knows that he can do anything, and he's not limited by the confines of not belonging. My name is Connor, and I encourage you to come by our Indigenous Student Center at Norquest College at any time. It's a beautiful place, and we love having visitors. Thank you.